Hello, and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel. My name is Rachel Parker. My pronouns are she and her. I am an Anglican priest in the Anglican Church of Canada, the Diocese of Edmonton in beautiful Alberta, and I serve as the rector of the priest for Dayspring Ministries, which is St. Saviour's in Vermilion, St. Thomas in Wainwright, and St. Mary's in Edgerton. I'm glad to be with you again today. I've been away for a couple of days at a clergy conference, but I am back and at it again. My churches have all been doing, at varying speeds, this book, Wholehearted Faith by Rachael Held Evans. And in preparation for a Bible study with the Edgerton group, I was rereading chapter 4, The Liberation of the Know-It-All. And I've read this several times now, but it just struck me about the Shema, the hero Israel. So I'm going to share this with you and then share some of Rachel's thoughts and more words that she shared and then talk a little bit about it. So she says here, wholehearted, vulnerable faith lives not in the mental citadel, but on the open, windswept plains of the heart. And on that vast terrain, we are called first not to proclamation, but once again to observation, to listening, and to love. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. She goes on to say this: the Shema is, like so many prayers, not so much an act of telling God something about what we are experiencing than a ritual of recentering ourselves, not on our own certainty, but on our own faith, not on the futile chase for all knowledge, but on the path toward relationship with the only one who can be a true know-it-all, not on ourselves, but on the one who made us and the one who is with us. She also says that she goes on to talk about heart and soul and might. She says heart and soul and might. In other words, we are to love God with our whole selves, our whole messy and complicated and conflicted selves. Those who believe that they believe in God, but without any passion in their heart, without anguish of mind, without uncertainty, without doubt, without an element of despair, even in their consolation, believe only in the God idea, not in God himself, wrote the Spanish novelist and intellectual Miguel de Unamuno. In other words, certainty isn't faith. And faith is marked by the humility to let yourself question, which is not a shortcoming, but an acknowledgement of one's humanity. Implicit in that assessment is the conviction that God makes room for our questions and for our humanity, that God is not some legalistic taskmaster, but instead the source of grace. The God I, Rachael Held Evans, have come to believe in is not some stern grandpa in the sky, waiting in quiet exasperation for me to slip up, which I inevitably will, and then tallying up my acts of faithfulness and righteousness versus my deeds of ingratitude and or moral failure. The idea of that kind of God doesn't sit well with me at all. Instead, I've come to see God through the things God has done. God met Peter on the stormy waters of faith and took a holy sledgehammer to my self-constructed certainty. That God is the architect of creation, the engineer of love, and the master artisan who came up with the idea of the heart. That's taken from chapter 4 of Wholehearted Faith by Rachael Held Evans. Really do encourage you to, if you're on the path of wondering, is this Christianity thing really for me? Is it true? Is it something I could even thinking about? I really do recommend you read this book. It's really accessible. It's not highfalutin. And it's a quick read if you're a good reader. And if you're not a great reader, it's not a hard read. So I really do encourage you to take a look at it. But this idea that she starts off with the Shema and this sense of understanding God, not necessarily through intellect, that's a part of it, but this idea that we understand God and we direct our faith to God through a relationship of love. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. I find that absolutely incredible. Keep in mind, when this was written in Old Testament times, there were many, many, many gods. There were Everywhere you went, there was a god for this, a god for that, a god for fertility, a god for rain, a god for food and crops, and there's lots of gods. And the prophets that we follow, the prophets from the Old Testament, kept pointing people away from the gods of those local peoples, those local options, so to speak, and pointing them toward the overarching God, the God who had power over all those other gods, the God who could do things that the other gods couldn't do. And I know that for some people that's a really hard struggle to think about God referring to the fact in the Old Testament, referring to the fact that there were indeed other gods, but that that God is the one true God. I too often fall back, I'm sorry, onto pronouns because that's how I was brought up, referring to God as He, and I'm trying to learn how to not do that. It's not working very well, is it? Um, but but the God that we have come to understand as the God of all for us as Christians is a God that recognized that there were other competing gods with him. In today's society, we could say the competing gods of the economy, of social media, of the god of one-upmanship and having to be just better than the Joneses. There are many, many gods, and I think when I think about the gods, the multitude of gods in the Old Testament, I think that way, that people created things to help them understand the things they didn't understand, to help them deal with those things like drought, to help them deal with things like infertility or fertility. Um, Rather than praying to one God of all things, they would take a look at their lives and say, okay, this is what I need, so I'm going to pray to this God over here, or I'm going to pray to this God over here. Where we're invited to simply pray to God, recognizing that God is the creator of all, and hence we are able to not have to go through sort of intermediaries, but we can go directly to this one divine being, whatever whoever that divine being looks like and turns out to be, because I don't know. I confess that. But this idea of the Shema, the Lord is one, so that helps us get rid of the idea that we have to have competing gods. And for those of you who are struggling with the Christian concept of one in three and three in one, that we have God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, God is all encompassing. So the Spirit and the Son are part of that God. So God is one. The Lord our God is one God, one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. We are called just simply to love God. We're not being asked to negotiate God. We're not being asked to define God. We're not being asked to intellectualize God. We're simply being called to love. And I don't know about you, but for me, in my life, love has been an experience, an experiment. It's been something that I can't quantify. I cannot qualify. I can't sit down and say, this is what love is. Every once in a while, Rob will say, like, why do you love me? Usually he says it like, why do you love me? Like, I'm not lovable. He's totally lovable, by the way. Um, and I can say, well, you're a beautiful human being. You're handsome. You're smart. You make great meals. You plate my food. He's such a great guy. You take care of me. You care for me. You walk on the street side of the sidewalk when we're holding hands, walking down the street. You open doors for me. All those things. Those are not why I love Rob. Those are aspects of him that I appreciate. I don't know why I love him. I only know that I do. It's an experience. It's something that I don't choose to do. It's just a part of who I am. And when we experience it, we're experiencing God. We can do the mental arithmetic and we can do the mental gymnastics to do the whole, okay, but who is God and what is a divine being and how do I relate to him and why should I have to, or why should I, or how does God, that divine being, prove him or herself to me? All those things, that mental stuff, we can do that. I do that. That's where my uncertainty comes from, because when I start in the headspace, that's when my heart gets overwhelmed. It's like I can give up on God because I can't understand God, or I can fall back into the comfort of understanding and recognition that I don't have to understand God. Just like Rob doesn't have to understand why I love him, he just experiences that I do. It's important to both of us that I love him with all my heart, with all my strength, with all my soul, heart, soul, and strength. And I do. I love my husband with all my heart, all my soul, all my strength, because I first love God with all my heart, all my soul, and all my strength. And it's not about a tabulation sheet of what I've done wrong or not. It's not about God saying to me, you worked hard and you made some mistakes, but I'm going to forgive you anyway. It's about God saying, I created you and I loved you with all my heart, my soul, and my strength. And so I invite you to love me back that way. And I do. And it's a beautiful feeling. It is not a comfortable feeling all the time. It is not a feeling that makes me think I've got all the answers or that I feel comfortable and happy even when things are difficult. But it gives me a soft place to be, a strong place to be when things are difficult and I'm confused and I don't know what's going on. I can come back to that prayer. The Lord our God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. If I can do that, and sometimes I can't do that, but if I can at least try to do that, then it brings me back into that place where I know that I am loved with all that heart and all that soul and all that strength that envelops me in this love that divine offers to me, not because I deserve it, but because that is who God is. So that's my take for a Friday morning on God and things like that. Please tell me how you're feeling. I know everybody doesn't think the way I do, and I grow when you share with me your thoughts on the divine, and or your thoughts on the not divine. Um, it doesn't threaten my faith, but it does encourage me to look beyond what I already believe, and recognize that maybe God is calling me to believe bigger, and to believe more diversely. Who knows? Have a great weekend. I will be back on Sunday with Gospel on the Go and on Monday with Church at Home with Rachael. I hope you have a blessed weekend. Get lots of rest, and may you know that you are loved in strength, in heart, and soul. God bless you.